Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Jillian Johnson. Throughout the past week, it did not feel like October here in Central Texas as we had more record-breaking warmth. And it's hard to believe that we'll be heading into November over the coming days. We're still a little more than 50 days away from the official start to the winter season, which falls on Saturday, December 21st this year. But some in the United States have been living in a snow globe this past week as early season snowfall made its return. Take a look. Residents in parts of central Colorado woke up to wintry conditions this past Monday after snow fell in mountainous areas. Here's a look at those snowy conditions in Frisco, Colorado, Monday morning. This footage was posted by the Summit County Libraries. The National Weather Service warned locals to drive carefully after the first meaningful snow of the season. And here's the view of snow flurries falling out of the sky near Colorado Springs Monday, truly bringing the meaning of snow globe to life. And heavy snow caused difficult driving conditions through Wolf Creek Pass in Colorado's San Juan Mountains. The National Weather Service in Pueblo warned drivers in the area of roadways becoming slushy and icy in spots, which of course creates dangerous driving conditions. This footage was posted by William Money, showing those snowplows hard at work clearing the roads. And it wasn't just Colorado that saw its first significant snow of the season so far this month. Take a look at this. A winter-like storm brought significant snow accumulations to the northern mountains of Utah. More than 4 inches had fallen over the Brighton ski area, according to the National Weather Service. Locals there said that it was starting to look a lot more like winter. Utah residents were advised to prepare for winter driving conditions and to carry a well-equipped winter survival kit when traveling. While it may not feel like winter for us, the colder weather will be here before we know it. And just as you saw, some across the nation are already saying winter is here. Last week, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, issued their upcoming winter season outlook. And now the Climate Prediction Center at the National Weather Service is giving us an idea of what we can expect to see in the season through their winter outlook projections. Maribel Gonzalez spoke to experts and has more on the forecast.
This winter could look a little different than the last one.
Overall, we are expecting warmer than normal temperatures across the southern tier of the country.
Last year, the natural climate pattern known as El Niño, in addition to warming due to fossil fuel pollution, brought warmer winters in the south and cooler ones in the north, with less snow in much of the northeast and Midwest. This year, its counterpart, La Niña, could bring a warmer and drier south and a wetter north.
Above normal temperatures are more likely across the southern tier of the country, also northward along the eastern seaboard, with below normal temperatures favored for parts of the northern Rockies and northern plains.
But no two La Niña winters are the same, and their strength matters. The Climate Prediction Center forecasts this one to be a weaker event.
We would expect a more variable weather pattern. So you could go from warm and wet to cold and dry in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks.
And while El Niño and La Niña climate patterns help give us a good idea of what to expect, experts like Peter Goebel, climatologist at Colorado State University, says Mother Nature will have the ultimate say.
I like to use the analogy with El Niño, La Niña of it's like playing a game of cards or poker with a few extra aces in the deck. You might have an idea of how the deck is stacked, but it doesn't mean you know exactly what hand you're going to get.
I'm Maribel Gonzalez reporting.
We now bring in First Alert meteorologist Sean Bellafury, who has more on what La Niña is and how it influences our weather here at home. Sean.
As we move our way into winter, we are expecting La Niña conditions to return. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the Oceanic Niño Index. This is a look at the sea surface temperature anomaly across the Pacific and the Atlantic, whether the sea surface temperatures are hotter than or colder than normal. And notice how we have this area right here just near the equator, just off of South America, that has cooler than normal sea surface temperatures. Kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, and that is because, well, it kind of is. That is La Niña starting to develop. Now, since 2020, we have had 3 out of our 4 winters, 2020, 21, 22, feature La Niña conditions. But last winter, 2023, we were solidly in El Niño conditions, and now, of course, we are transitioning back into a La Niña with those cooler than normal sea surface temperatures. During El Niño winters, we typically see the Pacific Pacific jet stream going across the southern United States with wetter than normal conditions for Texas. In 2023, when we were transitioning away from the La Nina early in the year into El Nino conditions late in the year, we did start to pick up the pace a little bit with the rainfall, especially in September, October, and December. Now, so far this year, we have started out with those El Nino conditions. We start out January very, very rainy and wet, but since April, we have been transitioning back to La Nina, and really so over the last couple of months. We have not seen a lot of rain, and you can partially attribute that to the transition into what is going to be a La Nina winter. So what is La Nina? Well, whenever we see the trade winds normally blowing east to west across the equator, that pushes warm surface waters westward. And what happens then is the cooler waters that is beneath those warmer sea surface temperatures, that upwells to the surface, and that changes the weather patterns across the United States. Typically, for the southern United States, including Texas, a La Nina winter features drier than normal and warmer than normal conditions. And of course, we have been feeling that for the past couple of weeks. This is a winter temperature outlook December through February. And notice it looks pretty similar to what a La Nina winter looks like. Hotter than normal weather for the deep south, and for Texas, drier than normal conditions are expected. Now, even though we are expecting it to be hotter than normal this winter, our La Nina winters do typically feature some pretty big cold snaps, like 2021. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafiore, KWTX News 10.
Thanks, Sean. And take a look at your screen. Extreme rainfall prompted over 300 water rescues in New Mexico last weekend. This flooding also killed at least 2 people and left dozens more hospitalized. Rainwater spilled into homes and numerous vehicles were swept away. As Laura Aguirre shows us, so one of those rescues was actually a first responder rushing in to help others when those floodwaters were rising and actually ended up engulfing him.
I am sitting on the roof of my cop car, my police truck. I am completely surrounded by water.
Chaves County, New Mexico Sheriff Mike Harrington found himself in need of rescue as torrential floodwaters swamped his cruiser over the weekend.
Those people here on the west side of Roswell, a lot of their houses are flooded and their cars are flooded.
The Roswell area hit particularly hard after a historical amount of rain fell in just a few hours, washing over roads and through neighborhoods, prompting hundreds of water rescues and sending dozens of people to nearby hospitals.
I am sitting on top of my vehicle, and a couple people who were walking through the water came and sat here with me.
Sheriff Harrington and his fellow stranded motorists were among those safely pulled from vehicles or buildings amid raging floodwaters. Flood watches and warnings persisted throughout the region until early Monday morning, and in the daylight hours since, the water has started to recede, revealing the full scope of the damage. Vehicles swept away, now piled up along roadsides or under bridges. A number of homes and businesses flooded out. As Roswell begins the recovery process, it does so having set a new record. The National Weather Service says Saturday's rainfall hit 5.78 inches, just edging out the previous high mark set in November of 1901. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
This upcoming Thursday is Halloween. The forecast right now does call for some cooler temperatures, but will it be as cool as we should be? Typically on Halloween, we should start the day around 51 degrees, with temperatures warming up to around 75 on average. Now, we have had some hot Halloweens and even some cold ones too. The hottest afternoon on Halloween was back in 1977 when temperatures reached up to 90 degrees. But back in 1991, we had a very cold holiday as temperatures only reached up to 46 for the afternoon. The coldest temperature ever recorded on October 31st took place back in 1993 when temperatures dropped down to 25 degrees. There have only been 3 Halloweens in our history that have featured freezing temperatures. And as an early reminder, next weekend is time change weekend. Daylight saving time comes to an end at 2 a.m. next Sunday, November 3rd. It is that time of the year when we set our clocks an hour backwards, so we gain an extra hour of sleep, but it starts to get dark very early. Weather Xtra will be right back. Welcome back to Weather Xtra. Forecasters called for an above normal hurricane season this year, and that's truly been the case so far. Hurricane season continues through November 30th, and so the threat for additional storms is not over just yet. While the past few weeks have been quiet in terms of landfalling tropical systems, many are still picking up the pieces after two very devastating storms hit the southeast back in late September and early October. Hurricanes Helene and Milton will go down in the record books for not only the amount of damage left behind, but also the number of casualties these storms caused. Millions are now left with trying to start their lives over and are in need of help from our government. FEMA continues to respond to the victims of Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and an agency spokesperson says it has roughly $8.5 billion in its disaster relief fund. Despite the relatively low balance, the spokesperson says that FEMA has the funding it needs to continue recovery efforts from both hurricanes. The balance is also a reflection of how it has been a year of non-stop disasters, filled with not only those hurricanes, but also tornadoes, wildfires, and floods. FEMA recently received around $20 billion from Congress to respond to hurricane season after the agency ran out of money earlier this year. Congress may be forced to replenish the disaster relief funds, but the House of Representatives isn't expected to return until after the November election, so we'll have to wait and see if more money will be granted. But the Small Business Administration's disaster loan program has run out of money following those back-to-back major hurricanes. In a statement, President Biden called the program a critical lifeline to small business and renters who have been impacted by disasters. The SBA has received roughly 49,000 applicants for relief from those impacted by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Despite the depleted funds, the president is urging people to continue to apply for the loans. He says Speaker Mike Johnson has promised the fund will be replenished once the House of Representatives returns after the elections. Property losses are adding up in the wake of Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Several analysts have put the number of insured losses in the tens of billions of dollars, and uninsured losses could tally billions more. As Laura Aguirre explains, increasingly frequent severe weather events may serve as a policy wake-up call, especially when it comes to flooding coverage.
Nobody is immune to flooding in the United States.
Nowhere is that more devastatingly apparent than in the southeastern U.S., where a 1-2 punch by Hurricanes Helene and Milton have left entire regions across 6 states completely decimated.
Unfortunately, most of the losses we are seeing from the tragedy of Hurricane Helene are not insured.
Those uninsured Helene-related losses could reach $30 billion, according to one assessment by CoreLogic. In the mountains of western North Carolina, where entire towns were washed away by historically high flooding, many residents did not carry flood insurance.
If they don't live in a coastal area, they figure they're safe.
Mark Friedlander of the Insurance Information Institute says Helene's catastrophic aftermath serves as a reminder for everyone to review their homeowner's policy.
No matter where you live in the country, you need to own your risk, meaning you need to understand the potential hazards you might face in your community,
such as regions with higher wildfire risk or frequent tornado activity. But Friedlander also points out
your standard property insurance policy does not cover flood. That's why you need to have separate coverage. And that's true nationally.
And that's true because
if it rains at your home, it could flood at your home.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Laura Aguirre.
Straight ahead on Weather Extra is this week's episode of Degrees of Science. We'll be right back.
We're talking today with Martin Licious. He is from Tempest Tours. Now, Martin, you're a veteran storm chaser. What made you want to start a tour company where you took people out to see these storms?
Well, I didn't really want to necessarily start a tour company at the beginning. It was really sort of an answer to a need. I received a lot of phone calls and emails from people wanting to go chasing with me, and I would give them a couple days notice and they were not able to make it because of work. So we decided to make a tour company so we would have a fixed schedule where people like that could book a tour, a storm chase with us a year in advance or months in advance.
Where do y'all chase? Is it y'all stick to one area, or is it traveling all over to try to find these storms?
We chase from Texas up to the Dakotas. We occasionally go into Canada. So really from about maybe central Texas up to, southern Canada on the Great Plains.
What all goes into the process of, let's say, a normal day when you are getting ready to go out if somebody wanted to be a part of this?
On a typical day, we get up the forecasters. So our staff will get up and look at data, and then we'll have a weather briefing in the morning that we give to the guests, and then we hit the road and head to our target. And then once we get to the target, hopefully storms will develop and we'll track what we think is the best one. We'll occasionally stop during the storm and take pictures of it, and then we'll continue to track it until dark. And then after dark, we'll usually take pictures of lightning, and then we head to the closest town and stay at a motel.
So what happens if you've got a quieter weather stretch moving in for that time frame that someone books that trip?
So on fair weather days, which are actually important to have because it allows the atmosphere to recover and warm up for the next storm day. But on those particular days, we'll go somewhere that's on the way to the next day's target. And it might be Mount Rushmore, it might be Rocky Mountain National Park, it might be Chimney Rock in Nebraska, Palo Duro Canyon in Texas. So a lot of natural features that we go and see, historical sites, barbecue, good restaurants, that sort of thing. We basically just like to have fun, even if we don't have a storm that particular day.
What is it like being a storm chaser, going close to these storms, but then not only got to try to keep yourself safe, but you've got a bunch of people in a van that you're trying to keep safe as well. What's that balancing act like for y'all?
So we have very, very strict safety guidelines. We only operate a maximum of 2 vans per tour, and the staff and the guests have to receive their orientation before the tour begins. It's mandatory. It's sort of the glue that holds our safety operations together, and people are aware of how we approach and track a storm safely, and they're all on the same page. That's really important for safety, that everybody needs to be on the same page, especially our drivers. They are what we're really most focused on, and we want to make sure that they do nothing but drive. They're not allowed to operate the radio or any of the technology in the vehicle. They can do only one thing, and that is drive. That kind of mentality where you have 2 hands on the steering wheel and doing nothing whatsoever except driving, I think that really helps a lot.
What kind of feedback do you get from folks that have been out on chases with y'all?
The number one thing that they say to me is they really, really appreciate our focus on safety, and they always feel comfortable when they're with our team. That's really by far the most important and common feedback that I get from our guests is how safe they feel when they're with us. I think that's really a concern of theirs before they sign up with a tour company, and they just seem relieved after they chase with us a few days. They see that we don't drive into tornadoes and we don't speed, and we're just very focused on safety, and I think that's the biggest feedback that I've gotten over the years.
If people were interested in doing this, where would they find more information about y'all's tours?
So to find us online, they can go to tempesttours.com, or they can go to Facebook /Tempest Tours.
And you were talking about some people being worried about the safety-wise. If this was somebody, do you want people that are more geared and excited about weather, or people that are scared about weather in general? Would this be something that you think would teach them more and kind of put them in connection with it?
That is a good question. A lot of people, I would say the vast majority of the people that we have that sign up with Tempest Tours are weather nerds just like us. You know, they're fascinated by weather, as they should be, and I think they just get a chance to learn more. We have young people that go with us that are so excited about what they learn, they actually become meteorologists. We've heard some of their stories after they've graduated and how, you know, they'll come back and thank us for showing them something. And then on occasion, we'll get somebody that is actually scared of storms, and they chase with us and they learn more about how they work and are less afraid and end up coming back again.
To hear more about these storm chasing tours, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. The world's largest wildlife bridge over the 101 freeway in Los Angeles is currently being built. Expected to open in 2026, scientists say this crossing is not a want, but a need to save vulnerable species, as it'll provide safe passage for the critical parts of the ecosystem of the iconic Santa Monica Mountains. Julia Vargas-Jones takes us to the construction site.
Precious scenes of life in the wild. unfolding next to a monstrosity of concrete and steel. The US 101 is a 10-lane highway that sees more than 300,000 vehicles daily in passing through central Los Angeles. It also separates the Santa Monica Mountains from the Sierra Madre Range, restricting the movement of California's mountain lions, a protected species with a dwindling population.
The cars are going really fast and they're really loud under here. What is that like for an animal?
Yeah, it's terrifying, right? I mean, the noise, the speed, the pavement. Most animals are not going to make it across this alive.
Beth Pratt is one of the driving forces behind the ambitious project to fix that. The Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing will reach over the US 101 freeway at roughly 175 feet wide and extending for 210 feet. It's the equivalent of another 10-lane highway.
The sheer size of it is really inspiring.
The more than 15,000 tons of concrete and steel will be covered with soil and native vegetation. But wildlife crossings are nothing new, from Florida's tunnels to this large-scale crossing in San Antonio, Texas.
It is a natural oasis. Cities see that, hey, this is something that's doable.
A message that it's not too late to let nature back into the human world.
This is all going to be a natural landscape over one of the world's busiest freeways.
Julia Vargas Jones, Agoura Hills, California.
Well, that's all we have for you on this week's episode of Weather Extra. It's hard to believe we're getting ready to head into the second to last month of the year later this week. Our team of meteorologists here at KWTX wish you all a happy Halloween. We'll see you right back here next weekend.